All right, if it's one thing you know about me, I don't duck any smoke. Now, while there are times I am unable to answer everything because things are said about me all day, and frankly, a lot of it isn't worth me responding to, but there are some criticisms of me recently that I definitely wanted to address. Now, last week, an old tweet of mine resurfaced, and there was a steady stream of dishonest characters trying to call me out on Twitter and a number of other of their platforms. Now, the tweet that they pulled of mine was from last September, and it was in response to several Black players from the Chicago Sky of the WNBA discussing how they have been harassed online and in person with racial slurs and other derogatory and hateful comments. Now, some of those players noted they have been subjected to more racist and homophobic harassment this season than they ever experienced in the league. Now, last season, Caitlin Clark was the story of the league, but as her popularity has grown in recent years, it was very obvious that there were these so-called fans latching onto her success and weaponizing it as a way to attack and belittle Black women. This had nothing to do with Clark herself, but it's hard not to notice how the vibe shifted from a certain segment of her fan base after Caitlin Clark liked Taylor Swift's Instagram post endorsing former Vice President Kamala Harris for president. And when Clark acknowledged in a recent Time magazine piece where she admitted she does benefit from white privilege and how it has played a role in her success and in terms of how her accomplishments are amplified. She also mentioned that there needed to be more done to elevate Black women in the WNBA who have helped shape the league. And that got folks, and you know the folks I'm talking about, real mad. So when the players from the Chicago Sky voiced their concerns about the racism that they face, I jumped in with my 2 cents after seeing this tweet. The people who would weaponize her for racist attacks or villainize her for the actions of others are two sides of the same coin here. She gets as much or more hate as any player, and yet she's the one asked to address it, to fix it. Now, I tweeted back, I don't like to play the oppression Olympics, but has Cece had to delete her social media accounts? No, but her teammate Aaliyah Boston did. Cece has given out a few hard shots herself, talked trash, jawed with the refs, and yet anytime she's subjected to physical play, a hard foul, or trash talk, opposing players are absolutely villainized. Now, she is not constantly subjected to racial slurs, and whatever hate she does experience, she is not told to toughen up or that her feelings don't matter. She is not subjected to both sidesism, nor are people trying to justify any hatred of her. Now, the reason they tried to throw this tweet back in my face is because of something truly awful recently that happened to Caitlin Clark.
This morning, WNBA star Caitlin Clark breathing a bit easier. 55-year-old Michael Lewis from Texas is behind bars, charged with stalking after prosecutors say he sent Clark a series of sexually violent messages.
You not only have someone who's maybe in a place of prominence, but also just kind of the nature and the aggressiveness of what was being tweeted.
According to court documents charging Lewis, there were at least 14 messages between December 16th and January 2nd, many too explicit to quote. In one, authorities say Lewis wrote in part, "Been driving around your house 3 times a day, but don't call the law just yet." In another, "I'm getting tickets. I'm sitting behind the bench." The affidavit says the FBI discovered recent messages were sent from a hotel about a half-mile away from the arena where Clark's team, the Indiana Fever, play, as well as a library in downtown Indianapolis. When police questioned the Texas native, he claimed he was on vacation, and this is just an imaginary relationship, according to the documents. But prosecutors say the messages were threatening. Clark told police she altered her public appearances and patterns of movement due to fear for her safety.
Now, that's horrible, and it's a shame that a number of female athletes in prominent positions have been violated this way and have had to face such unimaginable danger. Most recently, this happened to Paige Beckers of UConn, and of course, many of us remember one of the worst cases of this kind of terrorism when an obsessed fan of Steffi Graf's stabbed Monica Seles on the court back in 1993. Now, I deleted the tweet not because I don't stand by what I said, but because I knew dishonest characters would purposely take what I said out of context for the sake of some attention. And this situation was frankly too serious for all that nonsense. Now, clearly in my tweet, I was talking about racism, and specifically this idea that Caitlin Clark faces as much racism as the Black players in the WNBA. Now, had the conversation been about the safety threats posed to female athletes, well, that's a different subject entirely. Now, a reminder that I was among many people applauding the WNBA for finally making charter flights happen for the players. The number one reason was player safety. Now, it took a fan creepily following Caitlin Clark around in a baggage claim for the league to finally act and allow teams to use charter flights throughout the season and not just in the playoffs. Now, it shouldn't have come to that, but progress is progress, I guess. Now, there is no question that there are safety issues Caitlin Clark has to deal with that most others do not. I feel awful for her, and I'm relieved they caught this dumbass who had been stalking and threatening her. In no way would I ever downplay something as serious as what she has been subjected to, a situation that could have been worse if the authorities hadn't been able to catch this man. Now, that should be the focus here, and how women in her position are vulnerable to such threats. But these dishonest characters don't care about that. They get their excitement from using Caitlin Clark to criticize and demean Black women. If they can't do that, they're not nearly as interested. And one final thing. Now, I chose to address that tweet here rather than Twitter because, well, that's my right. And some things can't be summed up with a couple of tweets. Sometimes y'all need to hear from me. Literally. I'm Jemele Hill, and I approve this message.